I was just feeling like I've shared before how much I would feel overwhelmed, stressed out, overworked, anxious, just all the things, and just couldn't keep up with life. And even though I was showing up every day, I was still making sure the kids ate and had some measure of education. I was doing all of the bookkeeping and keeping up with all of our administration for our company and helping him and doing the grocery shopping and taking the kids to activities and to the doctor and like all the things. I was doing all the things, going to church and serving and all of that. But I was feeling like I was about to die. Welcome back to the Girl Just Feel podcast, where faith meets mental health and healing starts with feeling your feelings. I'm your host, Dr. Ajene Gailliard, and today we are going to talk about something that nobody told me before, that I wish somebody had told me so much longer ago, and that is that your body is trying to tell you something. So last time I talked about emotions, feelings, what the differences are, and gave us a new way to understand emotion. But today I want to switch gears just a little bit and talk to you about how our bodies actually are crying out and we just need to kind of listen and pay attention. Not in a mystical, strange, kind of way, but really that our bodies have been sending signals maybe for months, maybe even years, like it was for me. And if you're anything like me, and I'll tell you more about how I am, you've probably been ignoring those signals, miscategorizing them, and maybe even pushing them, or running to the doctor to get the doctor to tell you what's going on. So I know this because, like I said, I lived it, and you could probably identify with some of this. So for most of my adult life, and even now, I still deal with some of this. I've dealt with severe chronic pain. And the difference between chronic and acute. Acute means something that happens, and it occurs, it resolves, and then it goes away. Chronic means it's ongoing and has not resolved, right? So I dealt with chronic pain. I still deal with it. And even though it's improving, definitely dealing with weight fluctuations despite diet and exercise, hormonal imbalances, brain fog, fatigue. Now, I know you're thinking, for those of you who can see me, I'm a woman of a certain age. So your assumption is probably, oh, it's just perimenopause, right? It could be, and it very well could be, right? Some of my symptoms could very well be, but I started having these symptoms in my 20s. So all of what we're starting to identify. And I love to hear the conversations now more so than I've heard in the past about women's bodies, the changes that we are going through. There's so much more dialogue and conversation. And maybe one day we'll do an episode to discuss a little bit more. But today, what I want to talk about is how we can have unresolved chronic symptoms and often relegate that to just a medical issue. Now, could it be a medical issue? Probably sometimes, but it could also be something that I came to discover much, much later. It wasn't until something happened that really helped me to pay a closer attention. This had to be probably 15 years ago or so. My husband and I and our family, we have 4 children. They were young at the time, probably, I don't know, elementary age and under. Now, I did home educate our children, so they were home with me. So I was primarily responsible for their education, and so they didn't go to school daily, and so they were home with me. So they were young, elementary age and under, more like early elementary age, and I remember I had already started to work on, help my health challenges. I had already started to work on trying to lose weight after my youngest child was born. I had done a diet plan, exercise plan, and began to start working on losing weight. And I remember, just doing the things that you're supposed to do, addressing getting enough water and movement and calories in, calories out, all the things. But I was having these symptoms that I couldn't explain. Now, I had gone to the doctor all up until the time that I had our children. And because our children were born, all four of our children were born within a 4-year time span from 2004 to 2008. And that was that was a lot of children, a lot of deliveries, and they were all by C-section, unfortunately. So my body had gone through it. Prior to having our children, I had lost a lot of weight in undergrad due to anxiety and some other things, and I might tell you that story one day. And then I got into my graduate school program and gained a bunch of weight, probably like 50 pounds. And for my small frame, that was a lot of weight, especially in a small period of time. But I worked on it and I was able to lose the weight before my husband and I got married. And then about a year or so later, we started having our first kid. And from there, for 4 entire years, I was either pregnant or recovering from a pregnancy or, recovering from surgery. And so my body had really gone through the ringer. Ironically, though, when I was pregnant, I wasn't having the same level of symptoms, like especially the pain. I had other symptoms, and I did have an issue with morning sickness throughout the pregnancies from the beginning to the very end. Anyway, to get back to today's topic, I was having these symptoms, had gone to the doctor throughout the pregnancies and even postpartum, and had them look at my hormones. They told me everything looked good. Your thyroid looks good. Your levels are good. And so there was really no concern from the doctor's perspective. I get home, I'm raising these little kids, and I just am not feeling well. I'm tired all the time. My body's hurting all the time. I don't have much energy. My brain isn't quite working the way I thought it should. And I just couldn't keep up with my life and these 4 babies. So I remember, and this is after some other issues had come up that I had gone to the doctor to try to rule out, and they didn't really have any answers. But I remember one symptom in particular that really scared me. Like, this was different than the other stuff. The other stuff I kind of managed. I had learned to manage it. I had learned to just kind of deal. But this one scared me. I started having heart palpitations. My heart felt like it was jumping out of my chest. It wasn't a panic attack, because I didn't have the other symptoms that typically go along with that, but my heart would flutter and I got really, really nervous. I had to be in my early 30s. I think I had to be somewhere in my early 30s. And it really scared me. So of course, as I always did, I tried to go to the doctor to see what was going on because I'm having a physical symptom. So what do? You go to the doctor, you get it checked out. And I thought I was having a heart attack or close to a heart attack. So they hooked me up to a Holter monitor. They're checking everything. They want to see how, this is happening, what's going on. And they give me this device to wear for, I don't know, if I think it was a week or two, something like that. Then I would go back and they would read it to let me know what was happening. And this was their way of trying to diagnose any heart issues. So they have a process for how they do that, how they rule things out, or how they identify what might be going on. And the result was there was nothing wrong with my heart, which is great news, wonderful news. They, even during that period of time that I wore the Holter monitor, wanted me to write down when I felt a flutter. They wanted me to write it down and keep a little journal so that they could compare it to what the data was showing, what the output was showing on the Holter monitor. So I go back, and of course, my heart is fine, which is great news. There was no atrial fibrillation, and I'm not a medical doctor. I am a doctor, but I'm not a medical doctor. But I do have enough knowledge and information about some of these things. And so I understood, there wasn't a heart attack. It wasn't an EKG issue. And they really didn't have an explanation. They just said this can happen sometimes. So I go back to my life, and they don't go away. I still have these heart palpitations. And they were scary because I don't know if you've ever experienced your heart literally feeling like it's falling into your stomach. And it made me think that my life was about to end. I spent, I don't know, many years after that, still trying my best to do the things that you're quote unquote supposed to do for your wellness. I changed my diet. I did more exercise. I added in supplements. I consulted with functional doctors, or those are the type of people who are supposed to look beyond just the surface and look at the root issues of problems. I talked to friends and colleagues, and I did tons of research. Like, I did all the things to try to deal with this quote unquote medical symptom, and nothing seemed to fix these palpitations. And I've told this story in other spaces where I had a lot going on, as you could imagine. I got these four, I call them babies, but they weren't. They're, 4 kids in 4 years. So my oldest and youngest are 4 years apart. So there's a gap between the oldest the middle two of 2 years, but pretty much, I have two sets of Irish twins, if you want to call them that. So anyway, um, I was at home with them, homeschooling them. My husband and I were in real estate, trying to have this, real estate investment business that, we were trying to run out of our 2-bedroom apartment with these 4 children. He had a full-time job at the time. I was just trying to keep up with my life, taking care of our home, taking care of our children, serving him, honoring him. And I just I didn't have the energy. I was in pain all the time, and now I'm having these heart palpitations. It was just very difficult. And we were working on some things with our business, and I just couldn't get it all done. I was just feeling, like I've shared before, how much I would feel overwhelmed, stressed out, overworked, anxious, just all the things, and just couldn't keep up with life. And even though I was showing up every day, I was still making sure the kids ate and had some measure of education. I was doing all of the bookkeeping and keeping up with all of our administration for our company, and helping him, and doing the grocery shopping, and taking the kids to activities and to the doctor, and like all the things. I was doing all the things, going to church and serving and all of that. But I was feeling like I was about to die. I felt like I just couldn't keep up with my life. And I'm like, I'm too young to feel this old. What is happening? And so I'm praying and asking God for wisdom, and I'm seeking health coaches and talking to people of faith who are instructing me to do different things to help with my health. And I'm just desperate to God to get some relief. And I remember a good friend of ours who was working on our taxes. She was a woman who attended our church, amazing woman of God. And I think she knew I was stressed out. She actually gave me a book about it and really was trying to help me and be a good mentor. She was amazing. And she said to me, I know you have this work you need to do. I think there was a project we had going on, and I had to get some work done. So she said to me, why don't you check into a hotel overnight, so that you can just focus on this one activity, this one project, this one assignment that you have to do, and just give yourself space, because you're home with the kids all day. You have laundry to do, you have meals to cook, you have all these responsibilities. Why don't you, over the weekend while your husband's off of work, just check into a hotel so you can focus on this one project? And it has something related to the business. And I said, okay. So I asked my husband, and he said, great. Yeah, that sounds good. That's not a problem. Go ahead and do it. So I pack up. This was probably the first time in over 7 years that I had been away from my family at all. I don't think I had been away. The only time I had been away was if I was in the hospital having a baby. Other than that, I had not spent the night away from my family. So maybe a total of 7 years or so. And I check into the hotel. I bring my laptop. I sit down, and my heart starts palpitating. For the first time, I noticed that I didn't get the flutter. And I said, oh, okay. I felt like I could breathe. My chest that felt tight before didn't feel as tight this time. And what I noticed was I relaxed in my chair a little bit differently. I had been tense. I had kind of been holding myself. I don't know how to describe it to the audio listeners, but my muscles in my body, my back, my shoulders, my arms, my chest, everything was like squeezed or tight. And I think for the first time when I sat down in the hotel room, I kind of relaxed a little bit, and I noticed I didn't sense the little palpitations. And I just kind of thought, oh, I kind of noticed it, but didn't think much about it. And then I started getting to work. As I started working, I kind of noticed them come in and out. They weren't constant. So they would come and go. But I did notice in that moment I was experiencing less and less of them. So I think it might have been an overnight. And by the time I got back home, I can't remember if it was, maybe a few hours or a couple of days, the heart palpitations kind of returned. I think that was the first time that I realized, there's nothing physically wrong with my heart. The doctors hooked me up to all of the machines to test and see. They know how to see a diseased heart. They can recognize if there's, a blockage in an artery, or if there's plaque or other issues. They can see if there's abnormality in the valves, opening and closing. They can see all of that on their machines. And there wasn't anything physically wrong with my heart. The doctors had already ruled it out. So then why was my heart fluttering periodically throughout my days, throughout my weeks? Why did this symptom suddenly start showing up that I had never had before in my life? And what I came to recognize was this was not a physical symptom. This was an emotional one. This was not a response to a physical problem with my body or with my heart. This was a response to an emotional problem that I had yet to identify. And it was my body's way of alerting me that you've gone past your limit. You've done more than you have the capacity for. You stretched beyond what you are even have the bandwidth for. And something needs to get your attention. Now, I didn't have a conversation with my heart to discover this, but it started to make sense as I began to reflect on what was happening that, when I was in the hotel, they were not constant. They were spaced out more than I had experienced before. My heart stopped fluttering. My shoulders relaxed. My muscles weren't as tense. And as soon as I re-entered my stimulus, my environment that was reminding me of all the stuff I had to do and all the boxes that needed to be checked and all the responsibilities that I carried, then the symptoms returned. So what does that have to do with you? Because you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. You can identify with what I'm sharing because it's happening to you. It may not be heart palpitations. It might be something else. You might be grinding your teeth. You might notice every few minutes you realize, oh shoot, I'm clenching my teeth in response to the stress. That's what it was. Stress. And I know we use that word, we hear that word. We think we know what it means. We think we know what stress is, but we really don't know what it is. And we really don't understand its full impact. I think I'll break that down a little bit more in the next episode. But for today, I just want to draw our attention to the fact that we are uniquely, wonderfully made. God has wonderfully knit us together. He's done an exceptional job with crafting and creating us. And our bodies are not our enemies. Well, my body's not my enemy. At least I've begun to learn that. I used to believe. And it wasn't a conscious belief. It wasn't like I wrote down, my body's my enemy, but I treated my body and I responded to what my body was doing as if it was my enemy. And when I begin to recognize, no, my body is my friend. My body is me trying with all its might to get my attention. Why? To save my life. Not just my physical life, but my emotional life, my social life, my relational life, my spiritual life. My body is a part of me. It is not this external thing over there that I can just treat like whatever and ignore and think it's still going to be there for me in the morning. Like it is. But part of that experience helped me to recognize, number one, my body is an ally. It is really here to advocate for me, to help me. And so when I'm having symptoms that cannot be medically explained, maybe, just maybe, something else is happening that I need to pay attention to deal with. Number two, my body is my friend, a trusted partner right there with me everywhere I go that I can never get rid of, that I should that I should appreciate the relationship that I have with this vessel that I get to use in order to show up in my life and do all of the things and be with all of the people and have all the experiences. Like, my body is that friend that goes with me. So what is your body saying to you? What are the things that you are experiencing that can't be medically explained? I'm not talking about things that, because they're, again, just like the emotional life that we talked about last time, it isn't, we're not going to exhaust our understanding. So we have a measure of understanding about our bodies and what they do and how they work, but we cannot exhaust our understanding of our bodies. So there's always some new discovery. There's always some new scientific revelation of something that we didn't know before. But what we do know, what we can recognize, what we are able to discern is that if we don't have a medical explanation, which biology has a lot to do with that, your genetics has a lot to do with that, how some people end up with particular diseases and others don't. But when we talk about symptoms that can't be explained by a medical issue, we have to look beyond just what we can see on the surface and connect both our body and our inner man with what's happening. And what resides inside is our soul and our spirit. We are spirit, soul, and body. We are three in one, in that we have three components of how we're made up. And that's a powerful combination that because we often compartmentalize the parts of who we are, and we relegate our physical bodies outside of our internal and our inner man. What we often do is we think that they are disconnected and they don't go together. And so this can't be an explanation for something that's emotional. This can't be explanation for something that my soul is experiencing. And I'm here to say it very well could be. Now, I'm not against investigating, going to the doctor, getting the exams, looking into issues, because what if I was having a heart attack? What if it was more than just a physical manifestation of an emotional or spiritual issue? So we still do those things to rule it out. But once I understood that there was no physical, complications with my heart, I needed to look at my internal heart, the place where my emotions live, right? What we talked about before, the bodily experiences that happen, how my heart alerts the rest of me to what's happening inside, the seat of our emotions. And this is where I really want to admonish you to begin to lay aside some of the myths and the things that we believed that are untrue, and just lean into curiosity about, well, what is my body actually trying to say? If I've gone and gotten the exam and they're telling me nothing is there, why am I still having these sensations? Because your body is trying to tell you something. Now, what that is remains to be discovered, but I just want us to begin to be aware and to pay attention. So, me and these heart palpitations, and they do still happen. I'm not as afraid of them as I once was, because I understand what's happening. I understand usually it's because there's some level of stress I'm under. There could also be a gastrointestinal issue that could be prompting it, but that's another story for another day. But I'm not as reactive in fear to the palpitations if they do occur, or the heart flutters, because I do understand I'm probably feeling a little anxious. I'm probably a little bit stressed. I probably put more on my plate than I should have. And now my body is responding and saying, pay attention, pay attention. So I hope that encourages you to get curious. Remember, your last assignment was to start noticing some of the sensations in your body that have to do with emotional expression. Those are not constant. Those aren't coming up all the time. Those come and go based on the stimulus, the experience, or the event that's happening, right? But when I'm looking at chronic symptoms, things that aren't resolved, things that are happening kind of often, and yeah, you notice it, but then you're not really dealing with it. This is what I'm calling us to next. What has been happening that has been unresolved, that is unrelenting, that keeps happening? That's your body trying to tell you there's something that I need. There's something that we need. There's something that's unaddressed. There's something that has to be dealt with. Or I've pushed you too far. I've pushed you beyond the limits. And I think it's time for us to recognize what our limits are. So if you've been with me and you've listened up until this point, you know it's time for our life work. And today I want you to write down. I'm big on writing things down, and I'll share more about that in future episodes. But I want you to write down what one chronic body issue you've been having, and just sit with it. For me, it was the heart palpitations. For you, it might be a cramp in your calf that it has just not gone away. You're massaging it, you're doing the thing, you're putting the hot water bottle on it, and it's just not going away. That cramp has just been there. Just write down the one thing that you notice is just hasn't resolved. It's chronic. It keeps happening. You've gone to the doctor about it, and they said, "Oh no, there's nothing wrong." I just want you to write it down. That's it. Don't do anything with it. Just write it down. So I hope to see you, or for you to hear from me on our next episode. See you next time.